It's a pleasure to be introducing our next speaker, Dr. Vida Hamd. So Dr. Vida Hamd will be with us online. She's a public policy manager at Meta, United Arab Emirates. She is a public policy lead with a PhD in international law, with expertise spanning policy formulation, regulatory frameworks, and effective governance. She collaborates closely with governments, international bodies, and the private sector. Her professional judgment has driven impactful decision-making in a wide range of critical areas. She has 18 years of experience, which she developed, designed policy programs, and evaluated their implementation. Dr. Vida, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Okay, so we will wait. Yes, so we'll just wait for 1 second so that we demonstrate you on the screen.
Okay, can you also please tell me if my presentation is showing?
Yes. I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, super. I'll start then. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm happy to be with you, even if virtually, to explore the transformative power of data and how it can transcend mere numbers and charts to improve lives and solve important problems, especially in the context of crisis and conflict. So throughout the presentation, I will explain more about a program that is called Data for Good. It is a commitment that Meta started years ago. And I will go through some tools that are used by this program and how they have been used in the Lebanese context, in particularly to respond to conflict and crisis. So what is the Data for Good program at Meta? It's a program that leverages Meta's unique information on social connections, as well as Meta's capabilities in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computing power to generate new insights around humanitarian and development issues such as poverty reduction, health, climate change, and other humanitarian and development goals. This program is made of a range of tools that we co-developed with leading researchers, humanitarians, policymakers. Some of these tools are publicly available and others require data sharing agreements. But in general, I can say that this program has supported the work of more than 600 partners in over 80 countries around the world. And over 600 research articles and case studies have been published using Data for Good programs. So, what are these products or tools? Our tools are built from privacy-protected data from Meta platforms, as well as from satellite imagery and other publicly and commercially available sources. Some of our tools include geospatial data sets. Some relate to population and movement. Others relate to infrastructure, economy, and social connectedness. The AI models that power the products include models like the segment anything model that I mentioned in the morning for segmenting objects in any image. I'll walk you through a few of these tools and data dashboards. Let's start with the population density maps. These are built using satellite imagery and census data. They are publicly available for over 160 countries. They have been used to design rural electrification plans, water and sanitation programs, and to identify who's most at risk from flooding. One visualization is an example from our partners, and it shows how many people live within 1 kilometer of a water point and how many people are within 10 kilometers of a health facility in Kinshasa. The other example that you see in red and black is from UNDP Lebanon, who constructed a data-driven vulnerability outlook on Beirut's neighborhoods and leveraged Data for Good's high-resolution population density maps to support their analysis of vulnerability, accessibility, and neighborhood insights following the August 4th explosion. The assessment was conducted to identify where the most vulnerable groups exist within the city's neighborhoods, develop and use a multi-dimensional vulnerability index to understand intersectional vulnerabilities and conduct analysis at the household or at the business level, and then aggregate to the neighborhood level. Another tool that was used in Lebanon is the Facebook population during crisis. This tool includes data sets that show the number of Facebook users who are observed in a location following a crisis compared to a pre-crisis baseline here. So the image that you are seeing is a hotspot analysis of population density and movement trends following the Beirut port blitz. On the other side of the screen is another business-related tool, and it's called the Small Business Surveys. More than 200 million businesses use Facebook globally. The goal of our quarterly Small Business Survey is to learn about the unique perspectives, the challenges, and the opportunities of small and medium-sized businesses. Through 2022, the Future of Business Survey and the Global State of Small Businesses Survey were conducted biannually in partnership with the World Bank and Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. After the devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, Data for Good data sets on mobility and network coverage were heavily leveraged in response to these earthquakes to determine the location of affected populations as well as their access to cellular networks. Partners, including, for example, Direct Relief, Harvard, IFRC, WFP, relied on Data for Good insights to guide the shipment of medical supplies to areas in need, as well as to determine where cellular networks required emergency repair. On the other side of the slide, we see University of Oxford leveraged our business activity trends data sets to analyze the economic impact of the earthquake and provide recommendations for the future. Another interesting tool is our Relative Wealth Index, and it predicts the relative standards of living within countries, again, using privacy, protecting connectivity data, satellite imagery, and other data resources. It's been used to help identify where poor people live at a sub-neighborhood level. Now, this information is then used to increase coverage for social protection programs and make them available to a wider set of poor populations. The social connections tool measures the strength of connectedness between two geographical areas, as represented by the Facebook friendship ties. So the Facebook friendship ties can tell us important insights about economics, social mobility, and also health. Our social connectedness index has helped forecast the spread of COVID-19, for example. Understanding how people are gathering, you can also understand the likelihood of the virus spreading. We've also been supporting agencies. Responding to the conflict in Ukraine by sharing insights on social connectedness and mobility in nearby countries to predict the flow of people displaced from Ukraine. And in this image, I'm not sure, let me just show it properly. You can see how social connectedness was used to inform urban planning to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 11 to make cities inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. Some key features of our tools. So first, one of the key features of our tools is privacy by design. In order to preserve the privacy in the public data set, like for example, mobility tools data, we applied what is called a differential privacy or DP framework. Differential privacy minimizes risks of re-identification of an individual data by what is known as adding noise. Now, I'm not a technical person to exactly explain this, but I know that it's a kind of technique that is used as per the sensitivity of the data set to prevent re-identification of anyone whose data is being used. We have also open sourced our methodology for protecting privacy in location data in a publicly available publication. Secondly, the incorporation of AI in our tools. I alluded to this use of AI earlier. So for example, our high-resolution population density map leverages computer vision techniques, the kind of techniques that we use to help blind people read or identify what's in front of them. So the high resolution population density map leverages computer vision techniques to identify structures in satellite imagery that help produce estimates on where people live at a much finer level of detail than, for example, a census data alone might do. These techniques are, again, these techniques, as I mentioned, are similar to those used for visually impaired people to identify objects in photos. Thirdly, an open source approach. So we started an open source approach for Data for Good program 5 years ago. We have open sourced over 200 data sets through public release. And this has enabled governments, researchers, and nonprofits to innovate using our tools. Our publicly available tools were accessed over 10 million times in 2022 alone. Open sourcing our tools has also enabled nonprofit organizations around the world to build their own tools and platforms on top of our data sets, such as the M-Water platform that we saw in earlier slides, and that helps provide water and sanitation to rural populations around the world. Or even another example would be the Global Electrification Platform, which the World Bank uses to prioritize investments in rural electrification. In addition to publicly sharing our data sets, we have also open sourced methodologies and code bases, including our differential privacy approach in mobility data that I mentioned earlier. This allows for information sharing, learning, and replication within the research community. The social connectedness index, the movement distribution, the population density maps are all publicly available through a website that's called the Humanitarian Data Exchange website, HDX. Now, these were just a few examples of how non-traditional data sets from tech companies like Meta can become a force for positive change around the world. For more examples, details, and access to publicly available tools, you can visit these 3 sites that are also likely to contain various questions that can come to your mind. With that, I want to thank you, and I want to pass over to the next panelist.